Hey guys, Spud here, and today we're going to go over the Viper Throttle Quadrant System, or Viper TQS, and Viper panel from Thrustmaster. In full disclosure here guys, Thrustmaster did send me the Viper TQS Mission Pack for free, and I have refrained from reading and watching any other reviews in order to keep everything limited to my original thoughts on the pros and cons of this throttle system. The Viper TQS Mission Pack includes both the throttle grip, the Viper TQS, and the Viper panel, the button box portion, pre-mounted onto the base. These two pieces can be purchased separately, and as a result this review will roughly have two separate parts to it, but things will blend together a little bit. The Viper TQS Mission Pack's MSRP sits right at $529.99 US. While the standalone Viper TQS retails at $329.99, and the Viper panel at $249.99, which puts the system either just over or just under a lot of other high-end flight sim peripherals that are out there on the market currently, depending on how you look at it. This is the first hardware review I've been able to get out there in a really long time, and I seem to be cursed with huge life events getting in the way of hardware reviews right when hardware is sent out to me. So big apologies to Virpil on that, but I have definitely sent you guys a ton of business through word of mouth in my community. So hopefully we can break that curse with today's video, guys. When you first open up the box, I think you'll be a bit shocked like I was, with the whole shape of the thing, and it is quite huge for a flight sim throttle. And I suppose that's to be expected with a replica of the F-16's throttle, because in the real aircraft it lives in the sidewall of the cockpit, and that has to be represented in some way to make it at least a little bit realistic. But flying with what feels like a big fence next to you in your home cockpit will take a little bit of getting used to. To my very pleasant surprise, the build quality of the Viper TQS is fantastic, and is leaps and bounds ahead of its Warthog throttle older brother, and lives up to the quality of some of the other high-end flight sim peripheral competitors that did not exist when the Warthog was first released. However, there is a caveat to this on the Viper panel that we'll definitely discuss later in the video. Mounting options at the moment are mostly the same as the Thrustmaster Warthog, but Thrustmaster has stated they are working with a number of cockpit and desk clamp makers to ensure that mounting options customized for the Viper TQS will be available soon. With my experience with it so far, I highly recommend mounting this throttle. You may even need to reinforce your mounts for this throttle specifically. It is really heavy, and even heavier than the Thrustmaster Warthog, and the chaff and flare sidewall mounted button for emergencies is mounted on an arm so high and offset away from the longitudinal axis of the throttle that it can create quite a large moment of force on your mounting system when you need to smash it when a SAM or a bandit surprises you. Thankfully, the saving grace here is the button itself doesn't require all that much force to actually activate, so you can be a bit more gentle with it to prevent a large twisting moment on your mounting points if reinforcements are not practical within your home cockpit. Another consideration when mounting this throttle is you'll most likely need it to be mounted a bit further laterally to the left of your seat than other throttle systems on the market, because the grip protrudes rather far out to the side than other more generic throttles on the market. I found this out the hard way when it was very uncomfortable to use it in my standard throttle mounting position, where it felt like I was pulling the grip back into my armpit when I needed to bring the throttles back to idle. This is a quick and easy fix, just slide it a little bit to the left a few inches. I personally have a kind of funky mounting system for my throttles in my desk. I use some old Fox mounts that I have covered the throttle plate with Velcro tape to facilitate quick and easy swapping of throttles without the need to break out tools to loosen bolts or screws while still getting a nice and stable mounting platform. This allows me to swap out different throttles for particular aircraft rather quickly. For mounting and mountability, I would say the Viper TQS is roughly equivalent to a Thrustmaster Warthog, while being a little bit larger with the Viper panel mounted to it, and a bit more unwieldy. That may mean some of the adjustments to your home cockpit will probably need to be made to accommodate its taller and longer size. So now it's time to hop into the cockpit with our new Viper TQS. And what better way to put it through its paces than on the growling Sidewinder server, with its crazy perpetual BVR fight. The footage you've been seeing this video so far has been me on a rampage, crushing some noobs with the Viper TQS in the F-16 and JF-17 Thunder, and really pushing myself to the limit with this new equipment. This is where the product really shines. In the cockpit of your DCS F-16CM Block 50 Fighting Falcon, or the JF-17 Block 1 Thunder. These two aircraft in particular have always been more difficult for DCS world pilots, myself included, to bind to a more generalized throttle system due to the aircraft being highly reliant on 3-position switches and rotary axes on the real aircraft's HOTAS system. While it can be done, as evidenced by all of the DCS F-16 and JF-17 pilots out there, having a replica F-16C throttle really makes the process a lot easier and more intuitive. And once you're in the air in the heat of combat, I find it just all that much more intuitive and immersive, after some practice of course, than using buttons and hat switches trying to translate what should be on 3-position switches or on an axis. The speed brake, dogfight, and IFF/comm switches are crisp and snap into place, giving good haptic feedback to the user, allowing you to concentrate on your aircraft, avionics, and tactics as opposed to your hand on the throttle, with the very nice feature of having a small but very tactile middle detent on the manual range and antenna elevation knobs, having saved my bacon in intense BVR scenarios with bandits stacked at many different altitudes multiple times now. That being said, these knobs do seem to have a bit of a dead zone at the ends of their lengths of travel, which I could not fix via DCS axis tuning so far. And I would have liked to see these axes be a little less sensitive right out of the box. And while I know this can definitely be tuned within DCS, it is advertised as plug and play, and new players may not be familiar with this. I did have some other issues when it came to the default plug and play DCS keybinds for the F-16CM. Keep in mind there are no default keybinds for the JF-17 so far. But I am going to withhold too much judgment on this front because it is still pre-release, and I'm sure Thrustmaster and Equal Dynamics are still working on the final keybind mapping scheme, and because keybinds are such a personal choice for DCS world players. I know that as a content creator, my personal needs are very different from the average nugget just getting into DCS, or the veteran ace tearing up the skies in competitive PvP. And while we're on the subject of nitpicking, I do wish that the radar cursor axis had a stronger spring in it, but it does snap back to center no problem, and is probably more of a me problem than anything else. But it is something I'd love to see addressed in version 2.0 if it ever comes. Moving back to the positive side of things, there is one really awesome feature of the throttle grip that I would love to see in more flight sim hardware. A very easy to use and intuitive friction adjustment mechanism. Just rotating this tiny screw with the included and captive Allen key gives you a great tactile feedback with audible clicks as you adjust your throttle's friction. And most importantly, it seems to retain its setting very well through intense usage, something really important to someone like me who likes to have a ton of friction on my throttles for very precise thrust adjustment in-game. Moving on to the Viper panel at the base of the throttle, I have a bit less to say about this section because I tend to be less of a button box guy and I use my mouse a lot to interact with my cockpit to help you guys who are viewing my videos to keep track of what I'm doing and how I'm manipulating my aircraft. But just like the throttle grip, All of the buttons and switches are nice and stiff and give very nice and crisp tactile feedback, and are bound by default to the cockpit controls assigned to the labels on the button box itself. With a little tuning of the default keybinds, which once again are still being worked on pre-release, these keybinds on the Viper panel will be a welcome addition to many DCS World cockpits out there, and really help new DCS Viper pilots get up to speed faster with physical buttons for some of the most important controls scattered around the left-hand console of the F-16's cockpit. However, one thing on the base of the throttle that I'm definitely not a huge fan of is the gear extension handle on the forward portion of the Viper panel. It feels very plasticky and toy-like compared to the very rugged and great build quality of the rest of the throttle, and adds a lot of bulk to the forward section of the base of the Viper TQS, for not really much gain in my opinion. This large addition to the forward part of the Viper TQS also makes it larger than a Thrustmaster Warthog base, which can make mounting a little bit more difficult. However, the Viper TQS system is modular, and if you need to save space and just want a replica throttle grip, that's certainly an option by just buying the Viper TQS separate and not purchasing the Viper panel along with it. So what's the bottom line when it comes to the Viper TQS and the additional Viper panel, or both of them mated together in the Mission Ready system? So I thought to myself, Spud, would you recommend this throttle to your students, or the pilots that regularly fly in your missions? And the answer I came up with is definitely a yes, but I do have some notes that I think are very important to pay attention to. As you all know from watching my channel for many years now, I fly just about every module in DCS World, especially when it comes to the modern and Cold War jets, and this has made me rather hesitant in the past to get into more specialized HOTAS control systems for my home cockpit. This is because switching aircraft within DCS World would then also mean switching out physical components in my home cockpit. And while I've been doing this with stick grips on my Verbal Warbird base for quite some time now, I have just recently gotten into having multiple throttles. So if you're a huge DCS World F-16C Viper or JF-17 Thunder fan, and these are the modules you fly the most, then I would enthusiastically recommend the Viper TQS and Viper panel for you, as it makes flying these two modules in particular much more enjoyable and, in my opinion, much more immersive as well. But bear in mind that this throttle and its setup does not lend itself well for use with other aircraft in DCS, such as the F-18C Hornet, F-15E Strike Eagle, or AV-8B Harrier, and others of course. So if you are a Fighting Falcon and Thunder fan, then this is definitely the throttle for you. But if you enjoy flying multiple types of aircraft and do not have the budget for multiple throttles, then I highly recommend going with a more general throttle product such as the Thrustmaster Warthog. So thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you in the next one. If this review helped you out, please leave a like and a subscribe, and of course fly safe out there guys, and we'll see you in the next one.